Well, welcome back, everyone, to the second session of Spiritual Activism. This is our most challenging session in terms of the technology and the numbers of people speaking. So I'm going to just try to facilitate the best I can and mostly get out of the way. We were going to talk about cross-divide dialogue, and I think the speakers will do their best to address cross-divide dialogue. But you may remember that we addressed that quite a bit in the last session, it felt like. So that was nice. We kind of went there. So we've got that under our belts, and we can move on to how people are maybe doing cross-divide dialogue out in the world. And, you know, for the speakers, whatever you want to say about that in terms of solutions. So this morning we looked at what gets in the way of our listening and our being able to have a conversation and really hear and come into alignment with people. We looked at the principles. And so now this is about what are people out there doing in the world. Dajohn was able to speak last night. So they've heard from Dajohn in terms of his story quite a bit. So it might be more about questions or what you two have to share since you're new to us, Mara and Eirik. And we have Freddy Jackson here as well. So I think what I'll do is just introduce everybody and then let you go ahead and speak and see if there are questions from the group. So the new folks in the room with us are Mara Gleason. Some of you may know her already. She's done a lot of work in the principles, starting with, I remember meeting her as an intern for Pransky and Associates. She came down to Santa Clara County. Do you remember that, Mara? I think that's when I first met you.
Yeah, of course.
And since then, she's kind of been like a rocket. She's been in England working with Aaron Turner. She helped to start the One Thought Institute. She's worked with corporations. She's worked with all kinds of organizations over the years. And she's most recently the author of One Thought Changes Everything. And she just was married to Eirik Olsen, who's joining us as well from New York, I believe, yeah?
I'm in New York, he's in Chicago.
I'm in Chicago,
Eirik's
actually.
in Chicago, Mara's in New York, and we're all over the place. And Eirik's been, I think, involved for, what, 4 or 5 years in the principles, and is the founder of North Mind, which is the first principles-based organization in Norway. Is that right?
Yeah, back in the day it was, yeah.
Back in the day it was, and now not so much.
Yeah, well, now there's a lot of stuff happening all over Scandinavia, it feels like. But at that time, it was nothing happening.
Okay, great. And then together, I think what's most remarkable is the two of them got inspired to start working in community. And I don't even know what the story behind that was. That might be interesting to hear, is what inspired you to start One Solution, which is a nonprofit that's working in community. And when they started working with Dajohn and met people in Chicago, I believe they actually moved to Chicago to be able to continue to do that work. So that's commitment, you know. We also have Freddy Jackson here, who is from Charlottesville, right here. And I think it was Jen Lucas who pointed me to a YouTube video of Freddy standing in front of the Robert E. Lee statue talking about kind of, can't we all just get along? And he was talking about, look, there are different sides to this story, and I understand why people would think that this was a part of their history and their culture that they wanted to preserve. And I also understand why people would be upset by the statue and want it to come down. And I was so touched on the video when he said, I wonder if there's a way that we could get together and work this out together. So Freddy's in Charlottesville with a group he founded called Love No Ego. And he's been doing work in schools and in community settings, getting people together for dialogue. I'll let him talk more about what he does. Working with students to talk about really what's the difference between love and ego, and you know, and how do we know the difference? So he's not a principles practitioner, and yet he is what I saw. And it felt important to have someone from Charlottesville here especially given all the recent events. And I don't think we even knew what was going to happen in Charlottesville when we first talked. But you know, there was the white supremacist march here, and then the killing of one of the gals here who was a counter demonstrator. So it'll be interesting to hear what Freddy has to say. Is there anything I'm missing from your bio that you would like to add?
No, I can clear it up if it comes up when I'm talking.
Okay.
I don't think so, though.
Okay. And Dajohn, everybody's met already, I believe. So he's from Chicago, and we've heard your story, and he's up here again. So I think I'm just happy to hear how things unfold from you all. And the questions from the audience. I think it's going to be a little more free-form than I thought, because we have heard from Dajohn. So why don't we start with the virtual folks, and do you guys want to talk about how you got inspired to do One Solution? And anything you want to say about cross-divide dialogue, or the work that you've been doing with Dajohn too in Chicago? Either one of you.
Sure.
Yeah.
Should I go, Mara, and then you can follow up? Well, my story is very simple in terms of, like, I've never looked at myself to be any kind of activist or interested in big picture caring about the world in the way that I'm doing right now. And I think what happened to me a couple of years ago when we had this idea of One Solution is that basically after I came across what you're learning at the conference, it felt like stuff fell off my mind, and I start feeling so much better and so much lighter and so much more hopeful and full of potential with what I was doing, and a lot of limitations started to change for me. And it became clear to me that there was really no risk involved in the situation that I was living in. Like, I was good, and after I learned about my own mind, I really was good. Like, I felt like I didn't need anything else. I didn't need any more external things in my life. I didn't need a different internal reality even. I was kind of good. So after I was good, and I think this is what we've observed, and we'll talk about this in the communities too. When you struggle, or when you have a certain amount of internal noise, it's very hard to think clearly about contributing to the world, because you're busy caring about yourself. You're busy coping with life. You're busy coping with your own internal struggles. So when that got off my plate, it was like wide open to finally see what had been in front of me all the time, which is this whole world that I could play in, and I could help. I could really do something with, and I could think bigger than I had done before. And Mara, at the same time, I think had gone through the same process of learning for herself, then learning how to help other people, then learning how to do it in businesses or in certain contexts. And we both kind of sat down and what if we thought bigger than we have ever done before about this? And that if this is true for one person, and it's true for a business, and it's true for a community, it must be something universal that's true that would actually solve all of the world's problems. So we felt like if we're sitting on the solution to that much suffering in the world, we could kind of amp up our own game around that. So it started with an idea of me, Mara, and Aaron Turner and George and Linda at the time, by setting up a conference with that premise of what if you understand something about your mind can solve all of the world's problems. There's nothing that is beyond the mind, or it's nothing that can be solved without the mind playing it. So we called the conference One Solution. And the hypothesis was put any problem, put any challenge, put anything you see in the world, and you track it back to its source, you would see it began from the mind, and it came from the mind, and it was created from the mind. And that conference was just like a home run. Everybody loved it. We totally loved it. We felt so fresh and so hopeful and so new and so inspired to kind of like talk about it more. It was like a shot of energy almost. And the people in the room felt the same, and people started coming to like, this is what we want to do too. Everybody felt like I could contribute more, I could do more, I could, basically it's a natural drive towards contributing. And suddenly I found myself in like this place of trying to help the world in that way. And after that, it was basically just an organic flow from there, and context came to us, interesting projects, ideas, and we just kind of like let go of what we have done before and went all in on like really trying to take what you're learning about the mind at this conference and put it to the world stage and have it be as the source of any challenge you're looking to in the world. So that's my story around that. And that led us totally randomly to suddenly Mara's having a talk at a peace summit, which Dajohn is sitting in. We then have a follow-up conversation with him and a group of teenagers. He saw something which I'm sure he shared yesterday. He got so struck by it. We then met police, we talked to more people, and then it was kind of done for me and Mara. We're like, it's almost like Dajohn made us move to Chicago. He didn't say that, but like, it was so inspiring. It was so uplifting to see somebody who like sees something so profound and then literally see this kid grabbing a teenager a day to follow him. Like, it was pretty crazy and cool. So he would bring more people to us, then we would have other introductions, and suddenly it was just made sense to move to Chicago and go all in and see if we could help with the violence, help with the poverty, help with innovation, help with all facets of society, with everyone here, and use the mind as the framework for solving and contributing here. So that's kind of like the highlights of that journey. I don't know if you have anything to add, Mara.
No, I mean, you summed it up really well. I think the only, subtle difference in my personal journey with what you just described was just that feeling of not even realizing it, because it was kind of just a background thought in my head for so many years, but that the more I did this work and I saw that people completely, regardless of circumstance, regardless of life conditions, regardless of what had happened to them, when they uncovered a simpler understanding of their own mind, they changed the conditions of their life. And I saw that happen so many times in so many profound ways that I couldn't really watch the news or read the newspapers anymore without thinking, if only everyone knew this, that would solve that, that would solve that, that would solve that. It was like this frustration that I had that there was a solution. And it started to feel, without my realizing it, like sitting on the cure to cancer and watching all these people die. It was just like, and I think when Eirik and I got together, and we were having a conversation where I was almost complaining about that it was such a shame that, I saw all these things in the news and I felt frustrated that if people understood how the mind really worked, it would solve all these problems. And it wasn't until I said that in a conversation out loud to Eirik that I realized that had been on my mind. But I also realized in saying it that no one else was going to make that happen. So I was the frustration was like, why isn't someone changing that? And faster. And for those of you that have read my book, you know the story of Someday or heard me at the 3PGC conference. But when Eirik and I were having that conversation, and I heard myself say, you know, someday the world is going to understand how the mind really works, and that's going to solve these problems. And then that's when Eirik said to me, well, someday is just a thought too, and it doesn't get any closer. And that was really, for me, the beginning of one solution. It was like, yeah, duh, like, of course. If you see a solution, do something about that. Don't sit back and wait in frustration. So I feel really sheepish about it now, but I didn't see it until that moment. I mean, I was doing the work and helping people, lots of people, individuals, organizations, people who suffered from PTSD, all different kinds of things. And I was loving doing that work and really proud of that work. But something just clicked in my head where I realized, oh, we should be saying, here's a solution to the world's problems. If I see that, I need to be the one to say that. And then, you know, without going on too long, and you guys can ask us questions, but basically one solution as an organization is really devoted to getting the message out that there is a solution to the world's problems, and that it lies in looking at the mind, and it lies in helping empower people to discover a new understanding of their mind that allows them to make the change in their lives that they want to make, that allows them to be the change in the world that they want to be. And all of the projects, whether it's what we're doing in Chicago or what Stephanie Fox is doing in Israel and Palestine and with A Curious World, or what our Swedish partners are doing in Sweden, they're all just in service to proving that point and saying it louder and further. So, you know, when we met Dajohn, it was so clear that he's such a beautiful example of the point. And it was a no-brainer to want to help him. And he basically said, I want to do this. I want to bring this understanding to my community to help them. And we were like, great, we'll help you do that. Done.
So it would seem kind of natural to go to Dajohn right now, but since we heard from him last night, I want to really have a chance to hear from Freddy, who's sitting right next to me. And I want to thank you, Freddy, for jumping in with both feet into something that you probably had really very little to no idea about.
Right.
And you've been here the whole time. It's been wonderful to have you here. I think just really, what is your story? What did you start to see about love and ego? And
Yes. Well, for me, love is everything. You know, it's the truth. It's the one truth that will always be. It's the reason why we're here today in this room. It's why people come from all over the world and we sit here and we have this conversation. I just see it everywhere. I see the ideas, you know, it all comes from love. And what I do with the Love No Ego thing is I created the organization, the Love No Ego Group, AKA Love No Ego. I was frustrated with the way we treat each other, frustrated with the climate of our country, and then my own personal experiences and all the mistakes that I've made. I started to see the clarity later in life, how the ego was sort of limiting me and really just blocking me from those blessings naturally. You know, so I do motivational speaking. I go into the schools and we talk about love versus the ego. I want to pull that greatness, of course, within them and pull it out while also recognizing all the egotistical thoughts and behaviors that's pretty much limiting us as people. Also have a Love No Ego advocate team where we go out into the community and we have open table round discussions. Round table open discussions, open dialogue. We talk about human differences. We talk about social and community issues, as well as love no ego. Love versus the ego, once again. I've even, you know, once you're in purpose for what you are doing, like the purpose sort of takes care of itself. So even from speaking to so many schools now, I've even developed a youth basketball team of fifth graders, a co-ed team based on the same principles. And my principles are very similar to these principles of the Awesome or the Center for Sustainable Change principles. Love over ego, love over fear, and communication over conflict. For our youth and for our adults as well, like, you know, we have a lot of pressures. But particularly for our youth, part of my frustration was, like, they're watching this, they're seeing all of this. And on top of that, like, their pressures are, that's their world, that's it, that's all they know. Peer pressure, pressure to succeed, the bullying that goes on in school. To get them to sort of, I always ask this question, like, where are you living from? Is it from a place of love or is it from a place of ego? Are you making those decisions based on these egotistical, maybe fear, it might be a misperception. Perception alone is doubt. You know, it's what you may think, it's what you think. It's not the actual, necessarily the truth. So, you know, I want to get, particularly, our youth to see the opportunity in the conflict, in the fear, in the ego. See the opportunity that's in there and also encouraging them to consciously choose love over ego, love over the fear, and always choose the communication over the conflict. I get them, I sort of start, I have different methods and strategies, but I like to start with, you know, just, I love and I love the humanistic value that we have as human beings. That's why it's called beings, like we're being. And if you think about the world and the space that we have, you think about the oceans, the seas, the trees, the nature, you know. I mean, why is it that we go up to mountaintops and we stare at the skyline for 2 hours? Why do we always want to be on or go on vacation? We can't wait till vacation. Man, I need a vacation. You know, it's because I feel that's what we were created in. We were created in that love. So no matter what you go and do as far as, you know, your profession, career, or whatever it may be, there's always going to be that pull that's pulling you back to that presence, that truth. You know, people always say, oh, it's a miracle. No, that's what's supposed to happen. You know? Like, that's what's supposed to happen, people, like, you know? So I say, you know, like, focus on the things that you like, that you love, you know, and while recognizing at the same time the egotistical things that may be in your way, that may be blocking you from that truth and that light of who you are. You know, there's nothing more powerful than a human being with purpose. You know, I wake up at 3 a.m. I woke up this morning. I always set my alarm for 5, just in case I sleep a little bit more than I want to. But I get up around 3:45 every day, and I cannot wait to get this day started. You know, because I'm just in the love part of it. And I keep it around me all the time, like a t-shirt, I have a water bottle, stickers on it, because it's a practice. You all know that, you know, it's a practice, and we have to practice every day. We're human beings. So, you know, that's my spiel on it, and with that consciousness and that little bit of awareness, we're able to make better decisions. We meet better people. We have a happier life. It's a better journey. We're able to have this cross-divide dialogue. Even though I might not agree with you, like, I can sit here and smile at you and see where you're coming from, you know? And we're still friends, like you said, with the guy you're on the plane with, you know? So love is everything. It's the one truth for me that will always be, and I will try my hardest to practice whatever I can and stay close to it. So, and I felt like the ego was kind of that thing that kind of blocks us. So I created Love, No Ego.
And what did you see about the ego? At what point in your life did you say, well, wait a second, what's going on? And what did you notice about yourself? Like, and how could you start to tell the difference?
Oh, a lot of things. I'm a former college athlete, very competitive. I was coming up. I'm a former musician. I wrote and produced about 4 hip-hop albums. Just let's take one category, competitiveness. And when I was younger, if I lost in a basketball game, it was going to be a problem. Like I was ready to fuss and fight if I lost, And I was about 13 years old, and I have an older brother who's 10 years older than me. So I was always trying to beat him, which was going to be pretty much impossible. He's 20, I'm 10 years old, But he would just dog me and just put the whipping down on me on the basketball court, and I could not stand it, And I had older cousins as well. And just one particular incident, my uncle was playing with us, and I lost. And I got heated, and I threw the ball at him. I called him all sorts of names, and you know how you have that uncle as a kid, and any grown-up, if you do something that's really crossed the line, that's disrespectful, they give you that look, and you're like, oh, I just messed up. I just took it too far. And I tried to run away, but he caught me in the grass, and he was flipping me around, and put me on the ground, and he, I was started to cry, and he was like, what is wrong with you? What is wrong with you? And I was crying, and he said, apologize. I wouldn't apologize, And all of a sudden, I just kind of collapsed. I just kind of gave up. And he said, I need you to do something right now. And I was like, what? What do you need me to do? He said, I need you to tell me that you love me. And I was like, you know how you are when you're little, So I was like, oh, I love you. His name is Major, Uncle Major, right? So, but he had, he continued the conversation with me, and at that moment I realized what he was doing for me. He made me communicate during the conflict. Instead of sort of running from it, dodging it, or reacting in a way that, was totally not good for me, which I had already done, but he turned it into an educational situation. I think that was one point. If you guys were in here earlier, I described an exercise that my mentor had me do about writing down. He wrote down specific ages on a piece of paper, 5, 15, 18, 20, and he told me to write down what I remember at these particular times in my life. And you remember those things for a reason. And you have to be honest with yourself. You have to be, authentic with yourself. And I wrote these things down, and I recognized some things on there. They're like, whoa, why am I remembering that? My dad was a nightclub manager, and my mom was heavily into the church. My mom had my brother when she was 15, didn't even finish high school. My dad quit 11th grade, didn't finish high school. And I'm here now with 3 degrees, But I say that, to sort of see the journey. So back to these specific things here. I saw how what I was experiencing in my childhood, and I saw what I was seeing at 15 and 16 with those 2 lives that was causing a lot of conflict. It had shaped my perceptions about things. I didn't trust anybody. I could sit here and have a conversation with you, but I didn't trust you. That carried over into my relationships. And I had too much pride to talk about it or to tell my partner that, if she's going out of town for the weekend to work, that I was totally insecure about it. Like, oh my God, there's going to be all kind of dudes there and trying to get with her. She might get with one of them, just as a and I'm 41 years old now, but I just noticed this when I was 32, So just recognizing that fear And I tell the kids this too, like, you know, just a little slapping of the light bulb to make it flicker. You don't even have to screw it all the way in yet. Just that little bit of consciousness was like overwhelming and super, super awakening for me. So it's a lot of stories. I have a lot of them, but that's a couple of them that kind of led me into the Love No Ego tunnel, if you want to say.
And that, to me, that's so beautiful, because here we are, you know, we've got 100 people here, we've got conferences with 900 people in London, we've got backing, you know? And for you to realize these things almost on your own or with your uncle's help, it just shows what Sid Banks was saying all the time. It's inside of each one of us. And it just, when the spark gets ignited, it starts to burn.
Yeah. I mean, let's just think about this big old beautiful world and Earth. We're floating in space. And like, again, we have all this nature. And here's Amy, they drop you in here. Like, that alone says purpose. Like, you have dominance over everything there. So what is that purpose for you being there? Like, it's, and I like to talk about and bring up categories. Like, I did a speech yesterday before I checked in here last night at my high school that I went to, Buckingham County High School. And I had a big piece of paper on the wall, and I wrote down all these categories of life. And I wrote down white, black, Mexican, male, female, Buddhist, Baptist, Christian, Democrat, Republican. I mean, on and on and on and on and on and on. But over here, I had this universal space and creation and that beauty and that absolutely omnipresent and omnipotent of love over here, which I started with. And we went into these categories and we started discussing them and talking about them. And then you start seeing it come out how I'm defending my view now because I'm Christian, and you're defending your view because you're Buddhist, and you're defending this because you're this. And then all of a sudden we're looking at each other like this, like, you know, I don't like her, you know? So then as we talked about it, I just ripped it off the wall, I balled it up, and I threw it over in the corner. And I said, now erase it, and now it's gone, now what do you have? And they kind of looked at each other, you could see the smiles coming back a little bit. It's like, now all we have is each other and an opportunity to get to love and, you know, that goal. That's it. So we're absolutely here to choose love over that ego, love over fear, and always choose that communication over the conflict. So it's just a beautiful, beautiful, and awesome thing when you can practice it and know that truth of that miracle.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, Dajohn, we heard your story last night. I think what I was curious about, and then we'll open all the speakers up for questions and comments. You know, you guys are a part of this. We heard sort of the chronological story of what happened with the Peace Summit and what you saw meeting Mara. I wonder if you could talk a little more about the inside part, what you saw for yourself. Just like Freddy did, like what did you see for yourself about violence and why we're violent and what the solution is? And did you have any insights about your own behaviors?
Okay, so first, my insight about my own behavior, I saw that I wasn't like violent as much as I was when I didn't know about this type of stuff. Like when my two homies died over the summertime, my first thought was to go lash out and go try to kill the people that killed my homie, but I ain't do that. I talked to my grandma about it. I talked to my homies about it. I tried to calm all my homies down so they won't go do none of that, jeopardize their life, end up in jail or end up dead trying to go do something to somebody else. I just saw myself getting more like calm and in a better way that when I get mad, I don't gotta lash out. I can just calm myself down instead of just going and go do that bad negative thought. What else you ask?
I don't remember.
Oh,
Just what you saw when Mara was talking, maybe about anything at all.
Okay, well, back at the piece with Mara when she was talking, I thought like what she was saying was like a joke, to be honest, like, cause as I was growing up, my whole life was revenge, revenge, revenge. You get him before he gets you. You gotta get the first leg, never get the last leg. Just try to get it over with. Like, I've been through everything from brawls to people being shot at in front of me, all that. So like, when she was talking about like the circle of violence it can end, the retaliation it can end, I'm thinking in my head like, she just talking. I was paying attention, but same time it was going in one and out the other because like it wasn't really sticking to me. And then she kept on talking about it, and she was talking about the mind and how like the thought and the mind works. I got interested, and then it just clicked for me like, maybe it can end. Maybe the circle of violence can end. Maybe retaliation can end. Maybe, just maybe, all my homies can feel a little hope that like we don't gotta go do this to them just because we hurt, or we don't gotta go lash out or go do some crazy stuff to make ourselves feel better. So I changed a lot since my past years. I ain't been in no type of altercations. I ain't been getting sent out of class. I ain't been getting I got some demerits, but that's little stuff.
What was that? You what?
Demerits.
Oh.
Couple detentions, but that's like for untucked shirts and stuff like that, but nothing big and major no more. So I've been doing good ever since I found out about the mind and the way that it works. So I've been seeing a positive aspect out of myself ever since I learned about this.
Yeah, that's cool. So are Mara and Eirik there? There they are. Do you want to add anything to what Dajohn was saying?
Eirik, you're muted.
Sorry about that. I'm ventriloquist. Well, I was smiling because this week we had a meeting with Dajohn and some of his friends, and it was interesting because at that particular day, it wasn't about violence or crime. It was about everybody's girlfriends. It was about, everyone was, for some reason, all the girlfriends weren't behaving the way the guys wanted it that way. They were acting crazy apparently. And it was really interesting to hear, even though that was happening, because of what they learned, and because also kind of what Dajohn keeps pointing his friends towards, like it's very, it's like a ripple effect. So Dajohn saw it, then he's talking with his friends, and his friends is initially going like, yeah, I don't really think that. And then he keeps talking with them, and we meet them, and then they also start to see that it's possible. And I think one of the reasons is that when people are given an alternative to really from suffering, basically a reality that hurts or is hopeless, and they're presented with a reality that's hopeful and that actually can become real for them, every human being takes that. So when we've been talking with these kids, and also we can talk about the parents and other people we've been talking about, but it's been amazing to see that after they get that little moment that Dajohn explained of like, this is not possible, this is all talk, to only the question, maybe, whatever it is, like maybe retaliation is made up, maybe I can actually change. All you just started like a little of a flick of a questioning of the reality you thought were so hard before you started seeing it. And it's been amazing to see how the side effects have come from that. And it's also a work in progress. So some of the kids who were struggling with their girlfriends at that point. It was like, I feel all this and I want to be angry, but I didn't hit them. I wanted to do, like, one of the girlfriends apparently smacked one of the guys and he really wanted to do something. And he had that initial reaction of, I want to do something. And then a second thought came in his mind, what if you didn't? Or take a chill pill, or take 10, or wait a little bit, or wherever thoughts occurred to them. And then you see that is so simple, but it does stop you from pushing back on your friend, retaliating to your girlfriend, shooting a gun, going to war. It has huge effects to just have that little moment of where you're stopped in your tracks of something you're totally in and you think is real, and it's like, what if it isn't? Mm-hmm. And that is seriously the difference between life and death sometimes. Yes. Not for most people, but sometimes it really is. And I think that's so simple and so profound. I often, when we've been recording podcasts with Dajohn, I often tell her, well, you just explained the solution to world peace. And that's how we really see it when we're trying to do this, is that it's so simple, but like it is really so mundane in everyday examples, but it has huge consequences in terms of collective states of mind and all encompassing, like poverty. Like it changes everything, and it can really stop a circle of violence that has been for, it doesn't really matter how long, like it stops it in its tracks. So that's what I would point out with what Dajohn said. It's so simple, but it really is hugely profound, and we feel like that's what's going to change Chicago, and that's what's going to create a peaceful world too.
I also found it really interesting, just as the topic of this is cross-divide dialogue, and it was so intriguing when I flew yesterday from Chicago to New York. When I landed, I went and met up with a woman who I was introduced to by someone from the Skoll Foundation, and she's based here in New York. I won't name it just out of politeness, but she runs a very large global organization that's funded by a former prime minister, and it's works with hundreds of thousands of kids around the globe, basically doing cross-divide dialogue and getting these kids to talk with people of different backgrounds and different beliefs, and it's all about dialogue. What was really interesting is she was picking my brain about what we're doing in Chicago and around the world, and what they're doing. And she said, which I thought was really interesting, is what's a challenge is that the idea of dialogue is to hear other sides, to hear other opinions, and to open your mind. But, oftentimes, she says, people get very upset during these dialogues, during these conversations. And she says, I sometimes wonder if it's irresponsible what we're doing, because it's like we're bringing up all of this stuff that people have really strong emotions about. And it can get very upsetting. And yes, we have this process where we can kind of all hear from each other. But there was this questioning she had around how much suffering that seemed to bring to the surface, and how there wasn't necessarily resolution. As much as there was dialogue, there wasn't necessarily resolution. But the idea was that if people were open enough and they did these communication skills they'd been taught, that they should feel better or heard, or at least have their mind expanded. But that wasn't not always the case. And so I was explaining how what we're doing is different. And it was so interesting. And I thought about, like you just described, Eirik, when we go and when we meet with these kids, what I love is that we don't get into these issues. We're not getting into, race and inequality and boyfriend-girlfriend drama. We're always pointing people back to the simple but often overlooked origin of it all, which is that we take our thinking seriously in ways that hurts us. And if we didn't do that, we'd be okay. And it's such a simpler starting point, and that it brings people relief quite quickly often, but also it brings us before our divide, which I think is what's radically different and hopeful about pointing to universal principles of how everyone is essentially making their experience up from the inside out. So immediately, no matter what the different issues are and the differences in us culturally or racially or gender or what have you, we're looking at what comes before that, what's before the form of our differences, what universally unites us all. So we don't come up against any of that. We never have. And I think that's what's so hopeful. And that's what this woman was really intrigued by, because they have this, huge program with all these different kids, but they're struggling with that. And so she was really excited to learn more. And it just made me realize in that conversation how that's such a missing piece. And when we talk about cross-divide dialogue, it's like it already sets it up. She even called it, so she said, sometimes I feel like we're sitting there having the trauma Olympics. Everyone's competing to see who has the most traumatic life story or circumstance or whatever. I thought it was really cute, the trauma Olympics.
I want to add to that, because I think it's really, really profound what Mara said, in terms of we often create a divide and then try to not make it be divided after we've actually made it divided by making it a thing. So, and a simple example is that we've gone into several places and we talked, for example, with different places with people of different color, and for some reason it didn't occur to us that we were white and the people in the room were black. And because it didn't occur to us, it wasn't something that we felt we needed to address. So we had less problems with feeling like, oh, here's these white people that shouldn't be talking about this because they don't understand. We had less of that because we didn't create that problem in the first place. And then we got questioned afterwards by some of the people who were organizing it, like, how are you able to do that? Like, we often feel like we have to make sure that we acknowledge that we are of different color before we make these statements. And it made me tickle inside, because it was such a cute example of, you create a disconnect and then we try to connect each other. And we do it so naturally and so innocently that we have to clean up a mess that we forgot we didn't really need to make in the first place. And that thing is so profound that if what we're saying is true, then we are really no different. And if we stop talking about it like everything is different and you and me are such in disagreement and there's such huge differences between white and blacks or different religion, and we really have to bring people together, we've made the problem stronger by saying it is this huge divide between A and B, and it really isn't, unless we all agree that it is, in a way. And I know that sounds strange, but I really think what we've seen in Chicago and also in all other places is that we humans has to agree on something, and then we make that problem bigger, and then we get stuck in the form, as Mara said, of our different opinions about that. And it's very hard to get through to beyond that, or what Jerry said, like beyond the ego of people and into the love part, the thing that's before our differences, because we're so interested in fixing the divide of our differences rather than seeing beyond them, in a way.
Mm-hmm. I have this memory of working in Charlotte with Dave and his crew in an inner city community that we were working in there. And one of the first meetings we had, Lloyd Fields was with me. who worked on the Modelo project and is featured in Jack's book on Modelo. And this first meeting had single moms from the neighborhood who were just kind of struggling to keep their kids in school and work their jobs. And we had board members from the whole other side of town coming in their Mercedes. I remember the church had bullet holes in the window. And then I saw these Mercedes in the parking lot when I went to go get into the meeting as I was walking in. And then we had 3 of the police officers from the Charlotte, police division or whatever it's called. And we just started with the principles. And somehow talking about those principles helps everyone see immediately that we're all human and that we're making so much up. And that feeling of being human together was so strong that I remember one of the moms in the room saying, I feel so insecure because I've been asked to sit on the neighborhood association and I don't feel like I'm the kind of person who could sit on I just feel like I can't do it because she didn't have an education or whatever her thinking was. And one of the board members who was an architect said, honey, we're all insecure. I'm insecure in my job. So to hear about our common insecurities, I don't know why we started that way, we just did. And then the police officer said, and I'm insecure. He didn't actually say that word, but he said sometimes when I'm going to make calls, people think I'm going to be there and be Superman for them and solve all their problems. He said, I don't have a cape. I can't do that. He was just talking from the heart. And he said, and when there's child abuse, it's very hard for me. It's hard for me not to be angry. It's hard for me not to be upset. And in that conversation, it was like we all got to know each other as human beings. And what happened from that is that in that neighborhood, where Dave still lives, actually in Cheney, the crime rate went down by like 65%. This is what I mean by same outcomes as Modelo. Roger was not there. And God bless him, Dad, he would want for this to be happening. And the reason was because the community and the police started to trust each other. So the community would call the police, whereas before the police were the enemy. So if we can get this kind of dialogue going around these universal principles, around our innate goodness, our innate love, our innate compassion, and also we're just also messed up. And that's part of the conversation, to see that we're so messed up. We're all in the same boat. I just remember being so struck by that meeting. It stayed with me all this time. And I think that was the reason we got the outcomes we did in Charlotte. So having said that, I know I have a question for the group, since we have all these experts here. But I'm wanting to open it up. So I'll ask my question if there isn't another question, or I'll try to put it in as we go along with you all. Questions or comments from the audience? And let's use the microphone so that we can get this for the people who are streaming in.
My question has to do with the frustration of sitting on the cure for cancer. And does it have to happen one person at a time? Or is there any other way that people have found to somehow get the word out and spread it more quickly?
Well, I mean, I can start since I made that comment, but I think Eirik has certainly been a breath of fresh air for me working with him, because he has a really great mind about this, meaning he's always thinking of ideas that had never crossed my mind about how we share things with the world. How do we communicate with the public and different kinds of the public in different mediums, different forms? So I don't think it has to be, when you said that, there's a feeling of it's too slow, one person at a time. I do think it's something that can only be experienced from the inside out, mind by mind by mind, by the individuals that experience a shift like Dajohn. But what I love is Dajohn is one person who's now grabbed in a very short amount of time. We've only been there for a few months, like 15 other kids who are totally on board, and that's going to lead to more and more. So there is the ripple effect of the human chain that we grab each other and kind of bring each other to shore, so to speak. But I also think, we're experimenting with using media to reach people that we may never meet. And I'm sure it's already happened. Like, we were actually really pleasantly surprised when we got to Chicago, and we've had a blog, like a video blog, so people can kind of follow along with the One Solution journey on YouTube if they want. And when we, made it known on our blog that we'd moved to Chicago, we were reached out to by a couple of people. Hey, so excited to see One Solutions come to Chicago. We'd love to have dinner with you. And so we've had dinner with a few people that we had no idea were even following along. We never met them before. They weren't previously in our circle. So I do think that there is this potential today with technology and media to reach more than what we see right in front of us. And I think we are reaching more than we see right in front of us. But, and I'll let Eirik speak to it, I think we see one of our jobs with One Solution to be constantly getting curious about and innovating. How can we creatively reach more people?
I wanted to speak to the first part of it. It's the frustration part, and it's kind of like a paradox, but like in a way it feels like we as humans can care deeply and go all in on caring and doing all and kind of like doing our job and taking action. But at the same time, we have to realize that we might have nothing to do with it.
Right.
And that we might even be stopping it. Like, there's a bigger play happening. Like Jerry, was Jerry the guy I can't see? So other guy on the board. Well, he was talking about the trees and the mountains, like, and nature and the universe and like the nature of things and the infinite, how big everything is. And I think humans, if you look through time, we've always thought we were more important than we really were. And we really thought we understood more than we really do. And we're always in the present moment. We think we're right on track. And we look at the past and we think, oh, what were those guys thinking? But we have to realize we are now in what we're later going to say, what are you guys thinking? So we're making our best guess. We don't even know if it's right, but it feels like this is going at least in the right direction. But it has so much unknowns. So it's so much bigger than a human or humans. And it's more of a stage of evolution that takes off a lot of that frustration or pressure that something's on me, or there's stuff we don't understand here. It's so much bigger. But as I said on the first part, I'm still a human. I'm still filled with this energy and thought that tell me to like act on trying to help a better thing. And it seems like there's something innate in us that when we're feeling good, we really want to contribute and try to make things better. That's natural. That's human. That is available for everybody. But all the other stories seems like we're making most of them up. And that to me lets me like play the human game, but be totally off the hook and realize there's something bigger here that's way beyond me, that's going to take care of it, whether or not I reach what I want to reach, And so I don't know if that answers your question, but and the second part I would say, like with that, I think there are infinite ways that we haven't seen yet of how to share, how to communicate, how to talk. Some of them are through evolving technology. Some are that might be like we would evolve to communicate differently. It could be so much that we don't know now that the form of what we're sharing will definitely change in the next 5,000 years. But the essence will always be true. And I think that sticking to the essence and being willing to play with the form of it. And in this field that we're in, in my experience, we have a way more potential to play with the form of sharing and the fun parts of it. Like some of Dajohn's friends, they're now creating music. They want to create a rap about it. There's art. There's all these things that actually move cultures, like hip hop moves cultures. It creates a level of thinking. That's one way of doing it. Like there's so many ways. But the big thing is we don't really know, but like it's possible. And if we stick to the source, we can just see how many ways human beings can figure out to try to share it. It's more of a game at that point.
Eirik, I like what you say about sticking to the source, because as someone who was working with the center for 10 years, I had a lot of that passion for reaching out to foundations and let's get this going and why is this not happening, and come on. Kids are committing suicide in my neighborhood. I was like reaching out to everyone, on the school board and trying to get things going. And so coming back to source can mean stopping sometimes. That's what I found is when my feeling is getting urgent, what I saw was ego coming in. Like, I need to do this because I know I have the answer, and I should be able to do this because I do this kind of thing. And so I've seen, and that we'll be talking about that at the last session, self-care and grounding. How do we know when to take a pause or shift direction or just focus on ourselves sometimes? That's essential. Because we can't give what we don't have. And sometimes we lose it for a little while, and then our job is to get it back. So, any questions? Did you guys want to say anything about that?
I like to monitor like human frequency and like energy. I can't tell you like the amount of blessings and the amount of people that have either come up to me, have either sent me a comment or a review through the website, or how many parents have like that text me yesterday that I went to school with that was texting me saying, oh, my daughter said you came in and gave this powerful speech today. Oh, that's love. And then that energy multiplies, and they're like, how can I join your Love No Ego advocate team? So like a guy approached me. I'm a personal trainer as well, which is in tandem with that purpose as well. It's all coming from a place of love. Mm-hmm. And I'm a personal trainer for ACAC here in town. And I had a gentleman, 70-year-old white guy. He come up to me. He goes, hey, I watch you walk from point A to point B, and like you high-five two people, somebody slapped you on your back, you pointed across the gym at another person. And he's like, what is going on? Like, what's up with you? It's like, man, I'm just doing what I do, training folks, moving client to client, He's like, no, it's something else. It's something else. And I said, and at that time, I had just wrote and produced an album called Love No Ego. I wasn't even speaking yet. In March of next year, it'd be 2 years that I formed this. So I said, well, I have this music thing. And he's like, nah, that's not it. And I said, well, it's called Love No Ego. And he looked at me and he was like, that's it. He was like, that's what it is, He's like, give me more, right? So I was like, I have a client right here. I hadn't moved to client B, and he's like standing here trying to talk to me. And he goes, I want to invite y'all to my house for dinner. So long story short, he's like one of my major like supporters. It turns out he's like this retired multi-millionaire guy who's just frustrated as well. And he picked up on the energy, and that human frequency just multiplies. It multiplies in ways that I'm sorry, that he was saying, like, we can't even see, we don't even notice it. So I get comments from parents and other students and people, and I just believe in trying to practice staying on a good frequency. I could talk all day about just health and how it's related to all these cardiovascular diseases, and even, how consciousness is related to all that too. Had many clients that have reversed the cancerous process, like right before my eyes. It's incredible. Like, and it's like he was saying as well, it's so much bigger than just me, A kid asked me yesterday before speaking, like, aren't you nervous? I said, yeah, of course I'm nervous. I'm a little nervous. It's like, how do you do it? It's like all these kids, all these people and teachers and administrators and principals. I said, well, I kind of just think about the why. And I said, if I start thinking about Freddy so much and, this is Freddy, I want to make an impact. I want to make this, I want to do this, I want to do that. And I'm already up to like 10 things that's wrong with me, But, and when I focus on like love, no ego, it's like, it's easier to talk about the purpose. And I had a group of athletes in there as well. And to sum it all up, I told them, I said, we came to this conclusion that if you play for the name on the front of the jersey, like if you truly dive in and play for the name on the front of the jersey, like they will remember the name on the back of the jersey. So they really grabbed that and they were like, oh, yeah, Buckingham Knights. That's the name of my school, and they're like, oh, yeah. So, it's just, it's incredible. It's a way of life. And again, it's a practice, because we're humans and we make mistakes.
Dajohn, do you want to say anything about how you're reaching people or how to reach people?
Basically how I reach out to people is basically on social media. And so since I'm like well known around like a lot of areas, I just talk. I just constantly just talk. And then sometimes they don't listen, but if you keep talking to them, if you edge it up into their brain, then they'll like get it through their head. It's like doing math problem. You won't get it the first time or the second time. If you keep on doing the same math problem, it's gonna be edged into your brain. So as soon as you see it, you're gonna, oh, okay, I know how to do this. That's how I do it.
I was at elementary school, and those kids are really fresh, elementary level, and I was like trying to brainstorm ways I could present this message, but not have it be so much, So I talked to the teachers, like this was like the morning of the event. I was like, we need some ice cream. And they was like, what do you mean? I said, just get the ice cream, please. I'm coming, get the ice cream, A lot of different flavors, a lot, And so we got there and we started using the flavors of ice cream. It's like different nationalities, different professions, different walks of life. And we sort of just took the love, no ego, those principles, and made it more like acceptance, You Ben & Jerry's are coming out with a lot of funky and relevant and really good flavors. You don't want to be stuck on vanilla for the rest of your life, right? You want some chocolate syrup on there, right? So let's kind of open ourselves up to these different flavors and these different walks of life, and let this person talk, and let this flavor of ice cream, taste it, enjoy it. So it's many, many, many things we can do. It's many, many things we can do, and it's just good.
We have a question.
Yeah, I have a question for Dajohn. Because your videos are on One Thought, I've seen a lot of them, and I've shared them with a lot of young people that I work with. And they're in awe of what's happening. And I think the most beautiful part of it, and I wanted to ask you about this because it's kind of related to what Freddy was saying. They don't say, God, that guy's a superstar. What a cool dude. you know, they say, wow, what a beautiful feeling. And I'm wondering how do you feel that? And when you are, you know, out there in your community, you know, it doesn't seem, when I listen to you talk, it doesn't seem to be about you at all. It seems to be about, you know, what you're putting out there and what you're reaching towards. And I'm wondering, you know, how do people notice that? Do you get that comment too?
Yeah, sometimes, but like I just want to stay humble, and like I want to keep like the reason why I do what the things that I do. I want to like really, I don't care about no fame, no money, no getting no clout, getting no recognition, no paparazzi. I don't care about none of that. Long as my people know the reason why I'm doing it, long as I see the smiles upon their face, long as I get the city of Chicago back up to its right mind state, long as I like get a hope back to my area and like stop the violence, I'm all good. I can be like a nobody. Long as my people good, I'm all good.
You know, I'm wondering if there is anyone in the audience or in the group that hasn't had a chance to ask a question. Someone who's quieter who might like to ask a question or make a comment.
I want to make a comment. I wanted to comment on what he said about the ice cream thing. Yeah, because like that's a cool idea. Like, that's a cool way of learning. Because like if you get like people interested in it, because don't nobody want to just sit up and just hear people talk all day. Yeah. So like if you get them like interested in like do something like creative, it will stick to them. Yeah. Instead of just talking all day, you can get the ice cream, you get some spoons, some forks, or something like that, and like make it interesting. It'll stick into their brain more than just you just talking about it. Like with students and teachers, just keep talking. Like it won't be stuck into our brain. Like we gotta like play a game or do like a group activity or something like that, like to keep it stuck up in your head. So I really like your creativity with the ice cream.
Thank you. And me and Dajohn, we talked last night. I lived in Chicago for a little bit, and you know, Chicago is a big basketball city, like basketball, like breathe, and you know, and you know, just the competition factor comes up sometimes about, especially with me, like when being as competitive as I was growing up, I thought I needed the ego to show these guys that I can play, you know, I can hold my own on a basketball court. But the difference that I've come to notice in you know, the difference in confidence and ego is that my ego was like searching for that gratification like instantly, you know, like I need it now. I need it, like me now, or like even social media, how many likes that I have, all these, you know, the kids are embedded in this. So, but my confidence, you know, when I know the truth and I know the practice and I put in the work, like I can look at it in a different light and say, you know, like it's coming. Like, you know, I'm preparing, like, and it's a different feel. So I think especially with our youth being so competitive, pretty much in everything that they do, you know, I think that's something great to highlight for them, you know. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, so I have a question I want to throw out, since we're talking about love, not ego. And I'd just love to hear from anyone on the panel. I think, you know, the group can get involved. It seems to me that Sydney Banks used to say the ego is the whole problem. And he called the ego the image of self-importance. Sometimes I even call it just the image of a self. Because when we're not thinking about the self, that intelligence flows. And that compassion flows, and that love flows, and it feels really good. It's so funny, because the ego wants to feel good, but just absolutely does not know how, right? So one of the things that I think happens with the ego, or what we're calling the ego, is this sense of if I give up my position, I lose. I'm weak. It's weakness to let go. And I can see that happening in Chicago on the streets. It's weak to not fight back and get revenge. It's weak to not argue back. It's a failure. And so I just would love for the panel or people in the group to talk about that. How do you speak to that? Or what would you say about that?
I can start off.
Okay.
When I first started off, like my ego was up on the line, like my reputation with it, cause like I was like a fighter and all that stuff like that. But like when you like stop fighting and like you stop trying to go kill people, stop trying to go fight your oppositions, people might think that you weak. And if you like try to make peace, like people that you live around, they might think like you not loyal to us or like you not really down, you trying to do some other stuff like you the cops, you the police. They what going through my mind, I thought that they was going down me and everything like that. But the love I got from my city and from my homies, I'm like, I put my ego up on the line to try to help us out. And then like, so I started it, and then like, ain't nobody called me like weak or I was unloyal or nothing like that. They really like, they was really down for it. They was helping me out. They was like on my side with it. And like, that's like, that's like another thing with the thought. I made up all these negative thoughts in my mind, like this they gonna do, this they gonna say, but in reality, they was on my side. They was trying to help me out. They were trying to support me and make like my wishes come true. That's saying I'm trying to do the same thing for them.
Mm. That's cool.
Well, and if I can jump in real quick, I think that was one of the things that Dajohn really resonated with in the talk that I gave, which got him intrigued, was this idea of you have to rebel against what's popular in order to create change. And so when we decided that, when Dajohn basically stepped forward and said, I want to do this in my community, I want to help bring this understanding to more people so we can become peaceful, we realized, okay, you're basically a leader. And so what are you a leader of? Okay. And we thought, a club is basically the same thing as a gang, and you're recruiting people to see something different about their mind that can help them change the conditions of their community. And he really liked the idea of the rebels. So at first he was just the rebels. That was going to be the organization. But then when we looked for that on Instagram, it was already taken by someone who was doing some weird stuff. So then it was like, well, what are we the rebels for? Oh, we're the rebels for peace. And I've totally fallen in love with that name, the Rebels for Peace, because it's catchy, but I think it really, to your point that you're bringing up, Amy, it's about rebelling against that need, that illusory need to fit the status quo, to buckle to peer pressure, to do what you think people are expecting of you. Like, in a way, the Rebels for Peace are just laughing in the face of that and saying, yeah, that's not what we're about. We totally see that retaliation is, for the weak, if you will, and peace is for the strong. Like the ability to just completely turn everything on its head and redefine it by being rebellious in that way. So I just wanted to share that because I think for Dajohn, that was a real source of inspiration, this idea that he could rebel against that need of the ego to fit in and do the same that's always been done.
And I think for even a lot of people in this room who may not be looking at turf wars or gang fighting or anything like that, each of us individually deal with the ego just in terms of getting into arguments and wanting to win and wanting to be right. So I don't know if anyone has any thoughts about that.
I do.
Okay.
Well, when you say get into arguments, when I thought about relationships, like with husband and wife or boyfriend and girlfriend, like when they get into a huge argument, the girl always want to be right, then the boy got to try to be right, and then they got to state their cases and stuff like that. Like they missed the big point of like, what was the argument for in the first place? They get drowned in trying to be right. They missed like the big picture. So that's what I want to say.
What would the big picture be?
Oh, why they was arguing.
Oh, the original issue?
Right, the reason
Yeah.
is they get drowned in trying to be right. They missed like the big issue, and then the issue wasn't even that big. It was probably something like, why you ain't take out the garbage, or why you ain't wash that dish out. So like they arguing about something, then it goes bigger and bigger and bigger because the girl trying to say
Dajohn,
you
stop
ain't see.
talking about us at conferences. It's weird.
What did she say?
I don't know. I didn't hear it.
Oh my God.
He's been hanging out with us too much.
Oh,
It's embarrassing.
Yeah, they just missed the big pitch of it. Like the argument could have been a lot smoother if everybody wasn't trying to be right. Just like with the dividing thing, like if you stop trying to put everybody up in the category that you want to put them in, and just start like seeing people as who they are, and stop like with the police officers up in Chicago. Everybody think they like bad people. I always thought they was too. I made up a big thing about the police officers until I had a meeting with the superintendent of Chicago Police Department. I thought he was strict and like the sergeant type, but he was cool, he was chill, he was like just like one of me. So like that made me see different about mostly all the police officers. And then like with Mara and Eirik, I thought they was like some rich white folks when I first saw them. And then like when I started meeting them, like they was just like me, cursing, talking. It was just some
What
like
else? What else?
It was like an everyday thing. Like and then like they was just like me. They want to try new foods. I tried a lot of new foods with them. It was a real fun experience. So like now, how I see all the white people and people that's not like my race, I'm not gonna stereotype. I'm gonna get to know them first and then see what they're about first, and then talk about it.
That's awesome.
I know that Mara and Eirik want us to wrap this up now.
Yeah, you're a little too detailed over there.
Can I say something about relationships?
Yes.
Amy, I had a question real quick that I wanted to pose to Mara and Eirik, is it?
Eirik.
In my community, I experienced a young man that came up to me. He was at a funeral, and he came out, and he wasn't crying or anything like that. He just said to me, "I am tired of going to funerals." And it struck me that here is our generation that is now faced with this issue of being tired with watching their friends die in the streets. And so what you're doing in Chicago is a wonderful thing. And I'm just wondering how, under all of this huge mess and all of this hopelessness, how are you standing tall?
Well, you know, it's gonna sound weird, but I was almost a little bit worried about that going into this project because I, as Eirik and Dajohn can tell you, I'm a very emotional person and I cry very easily, and so I didn't know if I was gonna be faced with a lot of things that I would find really sad, but I've been pleasantly surprised that it's been the opposite. And it's not to say that I haven't heard some pretty harrowing stories and I know what these kids are going through, but it is so outweighed by so much more positivity than any of us, I think, see, appreciate, realize. So the kids are so inspiring, and the amount of people that really want to do good and really want to see a change and are taking steps to do it, that I think has filled me up so much so that even when I do see the sad things, like, you know, we went with Dajohn to get shirts made. And why don't you tell them that story, Dajohn? Where's our shirts? Anyway, we're getting t-shirts made eventually for the Rebels for Peace. And, you know, I was really struck, and we didn't even talk to you about this, Dajohn. I just realized it after, that majority of the shirts that people were getting made, it was like, make your own shirt with your own logo or whatever, were for funerals. Like a lot of the shirts on display as examples of what you could get were funeral shirts. And I remember thinking, funeral shirts? Like I never even seen anything like that. And that was the majority of the t-shirts in this place. But so I have my moments where I'm saddened by or taken aback by the suffering, but I think it is so hugely outweighed by the beauty and the love and the people who've just stepped up and want to help. So it fuels me, it feeds me, it makes the sadness pale in comparison.
I would add that it changes so fast or so slow about how it seems either hopeful or hopeless for us too. Like we've had moments where we feel like the stars are aligning, everything's going, the universe is conspiring to make this happen, things are coming to us, our minds are creative, everything is like, well, this is bound to happen. And then we literally wake up and it's like, nothing's happening. Like there's nothing here. Like we feel useless or like something's not, but it's so temporary and it's so, it's so just a natural part of doing something. So it doesn't stick. It doesn't help. And I think that's the part of being hopeless or even, or having an ego, is that it's really not an issue if it comes and goes and you understand what's happening. Like we get caught up and we do all those things but this standard, this like foundation of it is this hope, and it's hope in something that's true about humanity that Mara says outweighs the other things. And then to me, I just think it's just so ridiculous how little idea we have of what the world actually is, that I just don't believe a lot of the stuff that I experience, because with all the input from social media and news and my ideas about it, it just seems like such a mess of high probability that I have made something worse than I thought it is, that's cluttering my mind, that I've learned to kind of disregard it, not ignore it, just not be a part of me, not structure my day in a way. And it really has helped me, because I could look on the news one day and I have no idea, like, and as Mara said with Chicago, I've only met people who are hopeful. I've only met organizations who want to help. I've only met people who want to make a difference. I've only met people who are open to do something. So when people explain the opposite of Chicago, I'm like, which Chicago are you living in? I only meet people who really want to make a change here. Every human being I meet. And I'm like, how is Chicago in reality? Because I seem to think it's filled with people who want to make a change. And I meet people who say, oh no, there's so much, it's hopeless there. You can't really make a change here. I'm like, are we seeing the same Chicago? So there's something about realizing the world is what we think it is, literally. And if it feels hopeful, we live in a hopeful world. And if we think is opportunities there are opportunities there. It's so literal that what you experience of hope, that is what the world becomes. And seeing that has helped like me ground myself so much in that, and then be okay with my human fluctuations of feelings, basically. Mm-hmm. That makes sense? Mm-hmm. I can't see you, so I have no idea.
They look good.
Okay. Everyone's like, oh.
Maybe we can take one last comment or question. We're getting on to 5. I mean, we do have a half-hour break, so perhaps we could just do this. And yes, please take care of yourself if you need to get up and go. So this will be the last one.
Hi guys, it's Lindsay. Quick thought. So I just wanted to address your question too about hope. So one of the coolest things about Mara and Eirik being in Chicago is the visibility that they're bringing to these kids, or bringing these kids up for other people to see through all their platforms that they have. And so for the 10 years I've been in Chicago and working with youth, I mean, that is what it is. It's a lot of RIP t-shirts, and there's a lot of that around. But I just want to echo what they said. I mean, and as a great example about the hope, the last session that Dajohn was in was about trauma, and I was in a different breakout, and I came in after and I asked him, how was it? He said, it was good, it was about trauma. And I said, oh, did you contribute at all? He said, no, I don't have anything, I haven't experienced trauma. And I said, huh, okay. So I think that is a perfect example of what you see, and that he is the embodiment of hope. And when you hear his life as he tells it, or just read it on paper, we can make a lot of other stories up about what it must be like to be Dajohn, but here he is. So that's all.
Well, I just want to say that this panel has been a delight. I mean, I just wasn't expecting the kind of conversation that we had, and have Freddy here really coming from left field and yet sort of also fitting right in, just as the proof of the pudding to me that what we're talking about is universal truth that we can all discover because we all have it in our hearts, you know, in the middle of the desert. I don't know if Sid said this or Jesus or somebody. I know Jesus was in the desert. It's there, and this has just been the evidence for me. So thank you all so much for participating. It's been really, really wonderful. So thank you, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.